I click onto the Global Tropical Array for February the 1st, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the flood pressure amount alone and wind making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look to your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. We've got a few systems active today. We've got what was Tropical Cyclone Kirrily still active here across Australia. The system might briefly become a tropical cyclone again before it tracks further into Australia once again, mainly a rain threat with that one. We've got a weak low here off the coastline of Queensland. This is Invest 94P, came off the coastline a couple days ago, and will have a pretty low shot right now, but it might have a shot to become a tropical cyclone as it takes a bit of a weird track throughout the Coral Sea over the next week. We've also got Tropical Cyclone 9. It's not on your screen right now, but this is in the southwest Indian Ocean in a similar spot we've been talking about a lot over the past couple of weeks. You can see Rodrigues is here, and this is where the storm is centered, just east of the island. And the system right now is heavily sheared. You can see some cloud elements here in the northwestern part of your screen streaming towards the southeast. So it's being sheared from the northwest, meaning that all the thunderstorm activity is being pushed away from Rodrigues. Now, this will likely continue over the next few days as it just meanders sort of around here before a trough comes in and picks it up and dives it southeast. But there might be some potential for the system to bring some impacts to Rodrigues. There might be a chance for maybe a thunderstorm or two to come through. You can see this band here that is well north of the island. Some of the parts of it had some thunderstorms trying to blow up on it, and that might happen in some of these spiral bands you can see there in the low-level clouds, and that could bring some rainfall to the region. It might bring a little bit of gusty wind action, but in terms of impacts from a tropical cyclone, like we're talking tropical storm force winds, very heavy rainfall, not anticipating that with this one. You can see in the water vapor loop that it's on the southern end of an upper ridge. You can sort of see the winds on the northern side, the easterly winds on the northern side of this bridge, bending back into more westerly winds on the southern side, and those westerly winds is what is shearing the storm. And you can see in the 200 millibar flow from the GFS that exact same ridge. It's on the southern side of it. There's your shear, and really the storm is not going to be making too much movement over the next few days. You can see there might be a period of time on the on the GFS where it shows that it might try to come a little bit further northwest. By then, we could maybe get a few more impacts in Rodrigues, but this trough is digging in, and this is going to quickly drive it towards the southeast again, and by then the storm will be quickly moving away. Could we see some intensification here as the system does move towards the southeast with this jet streak? It's possible, but the system will likely be in extratropical transition during that time, so most of that intensification will probably occur more as a non-tropical cyclone overall. You can see the forecast from Mateo, France here, and you can see this just area of just a mess of a track. It's going southeast at a time, and then northwest, and then or northeast, and then northwest. Very messy track, but the key message here for Rodrigues is no significant impacts anticipated. What I've got is the wind field of, I believe, 28 knots. 28 knot wind speeds on the screen right there, and you can see it might touch the island as the system starts to come northwest. But again, the trough is going to dig in and carry it out to sea pretty quickly after that. And after this, it will likely be very quiet over the Indian Ocean. You can see that there is no areas of interest on their map, and I'll talk about it in a little bit towards the latter half of the video, but it does look like we're going to be focusing more so on the South Pacific after 9 over the next week or maybe even 2, as it looks like activity will be increasing there. And you can sort of see some of the precursor of that here in the convective activity near the equator. But again, I'll talk about that towards the latter half of the video. Firstly, let's go over the two systems here near Australia. We're going to touch on Kirrily first. Here's the zoomed in visible loop. You can see it's just on the coastline of Queensland and the Gulf of Carpentaria. There's the center there, compact little thing there. But the system is not a tropical cyclone right now. Really what it's lacking is organized deep convection really over the center. I guess you can have a sheared tropical cyclone, but what I mainly want to see is more of this convection to be concentrated and organized near the center. But you can see it is blowing up a lot of convection over the Gulf of Carpentaria and over portions of Queensland and the Northern Territories right now. And really significant intensification with this system is also not anticipated, mainly because it is over land right now, and you can see it's sort of stalled here. And over the next few days, it will start to dive south again, and it's likely not going to intensify much. The main threat here really is rainfall. Now, one thing that is also going against it is there is a bit of shear. You can see some cloud elements in the upper levels moving towards the northwest. This is some of the shear on the eastern end of a ridge across Australia. It's a very broad ridge. You can see it here. Easterly winds to the north, general westerly winds to the south, and this is highlighting a very broad area of high pressure. And our storm is on the eastern end of that ridge. It sort of bends around like this. So you've got some of the north or southeasterly flow rather pushing against the storm on the eastern end of that ridge. And you can see this in the GFS. Well, I thought I had the 200 millibar flow plot pulled up, but that's rainfall. But if you looked at a 200 millibar flow plot, you would see the streamlines in a similar fashion to what I just drew there. Now, in terms of rainfall that you could expect across a region, this is the rainfall forecast from the GFS over the next few days. You can see anywhere in purple here is about 45 millimeters of rainfall, but there are some highlighted areas of potentially more, mainly on the western end of the storm, and that's to be expected given that shear. And there, some totals might be locally higher, over 150 millimeters, or even potentially over 200 millimeters in some cases. And that could lead to some localized flooding issues. And you can see as the storm tracks further inland, tracks south again, some rainfall will follow it. And make sure you stay tuned to the Bureau of Meteorology. I'll leave a link to their website in the description so you can stay ahead of any potential flooding issues that you may have in your local area. All right, we're now moving out to the big view again. Again, we have this weak low east of Australia. This is Invest 94P. Here is the close-up visible loop. You can see this system, similarly to the other two systems, is being sheared. There's some westerly winds aloft coming towards the system. I believe this is also part of that same ridge shearing Kirrily. And you can see the very weak center right about here, and all of the convection is well displaced east of the storm. It's very far from a tropical cyclone, at least right now. And really, the shear is forecast to persist over the next few days. You can see, again, this is the initial 200 millibar flow plot, and you can see these westerly winds streaming across Australia into the system. Now, the system is going to track towards New Caledonia over the next few days. You can see by the weekend it's about there. And by this time, the flow from the ridge has relaxed a little bit, but the system is still being sheared. We have this trough that's dug in over the Coral Sea, and this is still bringing some northerly shear over our storm. And that's really not favoring development of the system at all. There's also a lot of dry air around this region. And really, models are not keen on development of the system as it comes through New Caledonia. And this agreement can be seen in the Fiji Meteorological Service graphic. I didn't pull it up, but their tropical weather outlook lists no probability of tropical cyclone formation. The chances, if it is going to try and form near New Caledonia, are very low. So not anticipating development there. Now, as the system does sit across New Caledonia, the steering pattern is going to weaken for a little bit. It's likely going to stall there for a few days, but eventually we're going to get this ridge to build south of it, and this is going to pull it towards the north into the Coral Sea. Like I said at the beginning, it's going to be a lot of weird tracks today. We've got the storm coming towards New Caledonia, and then sort of taking this northwestward track into the Coral Sea. By this point, once it gets into the Coral Sea, it might have a more favorable environment. You can see on the 200 millibar flow chart as we go into the Coral Sea, the system does get more of an upper level ridge over the system. And you can see as the system is tracking east, we have more upper level easterlies, not too strong either, over the system. So that's not as strong of shear for the system. And you can also see on the west side of the ridge, we've got more of a divergent flow spreading away from the storm. And this would be more favorable for the storm. And this might favor some development of the system. Now, the system will still have some obstacles. You can see, you might have seen it when I clicked onto this by accident. We will have a lot of dry air across the region. This tongue of dry air is sticking right into the Coral Sea on this run, and you can see it's on the northern side of the low. And this low is a bit more broad, and you can kind of see, if you remember back to Kirrily, when it was developing here in the Coral Sea, it kept sucking in dry air. It was very broad-centered. It kept sucking up a lot of dry air. And this might be a similar scenario where it just continuously sucks in some dry air on the northern side. Now, there might be some potential for the system to maybe get a concentrated bubble of moisture, and then by then we could see some development. I believe the GFS has been a little bit on and off about that. It's had some runs where it's been a little bit stronger, and runs like now where it's been a little bit weaker. But overall, development is possible, but I'd say right now chances are pretty low as the system just meanders across the Coral Sea. Now, in terms of track, there is a bit of uncertainty. After New Caledonia, the track towards New Caledonia is pretty high confidence, just given the ridge and the trough that's supposed to dig in. But after this, there's a little bit of uncertainty on exactly where it goes once it tracks more towards the northwest. The GFS is on an idea of the mid-level ridge continuing to push the system west into Australia eventually, and that could potentially bring some impacts your way. But we look at this on the European, the system is a little bit more just staying in one area on this front. It's not really coming west, and it's really just sitting here northwest of New Caledonia. If we look at the sounding from it, you can see some reason why. If you look in the low levels, we've got more flow trying to push the storm towards the southeast. Now, we don't have wind farms in the mid levels, but we do have plots that we can look at to tell us what's happening. The storm is here for reference. And what we've got is the same ridge building south of the storm. And keep in mind of the flow that I just highlighted in the sounding. We've got flow trying to push the storm towards the southeast. This ridge is trying to do the opposite. It's trying to push it towards the northwest. And what ends up happening is these two flows virtually cancel out, and the storm really does not track anywhere because of this flow, and it really just stays there over the next few days until eventually a trough comes in and starts to dive the system towards the east, potentially to Vanuatu, north of New Caledonia. We sort of have a spread here of tracks that could range from Australia to New Caledonia to Vanuatu in the long range. And the good news is the system's not likely to be strong at all, at all throughout this entire forecast, like I talked about with those impacts. And overall, like I said, the chance of development is low. You can see that here on the Bureau of Meteorology forecast. I'll zoom up so you can see the probability of development, but they've got it low, and you can see some of the track uncertainty there, but low chance overall of development. And really, this is just going to be something that we watch over the next few days and see if it does develop. We'll see if it tries to get maybe a more concentrated bubble of moisture over it. Maybe then we could see some development. If not, maybe it just sucks in a bunch of dry air like the GFS and the European show, and it just never does anything. We'll keep an eye on it, but this is sort of a precursor to what we can expect over the next few days, next couple of weeks rather, across the South Pacific. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of convective activity blowing up near the equator here, and this is likely the start of a more active period across the Pacific. What this is noting is the increased presence of rising air over the region. You can see how on the water vapor loop that I showed you for Tropical Cyclone 9, we've got a lot of dry air. Contrast to what we had about a couple weeks ago in the Southwest Indian Ocean. What's happened is all the rising air that caused our few tropical cyclones in the Southwest Indian Ocean has continued east, and it is now across the equatorial Pacific, and you can see that here with all this green rising air across the Pacific, and now compensating sinking air or dry air across the Indian Ocean. This is why the Indian Ocean is likely to quiet down over the next few days. But in response to this increased rising air, chances will increase for potential tropical cyclone development. We've already have some models in a longer range trying to form stuff. Exact details on that I can't give right now just because of the uncertainty range at this time. But you can see from the Climate Prediction Center, they do highlight odds of tropical development over the next couple of weeks. On week 2, which is February 7th to the 13th, nearly Valentine's Day, you can see potential development here across a large region of the Pacific, highlighted particularly across New Caledonia, Vanuatu, stretching over towards Fiji. And these odds are greater than 60% on their scale, so pretty significant odds and pretty high confidence that some form of tropical cyclone will form in week 2. After that, into week 3, we still have significant odds greater than 40% here across Vanuatu, stretching into Fiji and into islands further east across the international dateline. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks as we go through the month of February. This might be more of that active period that we discussed more towards the beginning of cyclone season, given the El Nino that we have in place along the equator. So I'll have uploads as we go throughout the next few weeks, of course, talking about each system as they come and go. And I'll probably have a few more videos out on mainly 94p if it does develop. If it doesn't develop all too significantly, I probably won't have too much out. But stay safe in Australia as Kirrily continues on. Hopefully we don't see too much flooding from that system. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.